It's me, Denise Stegall, your Menopause Mentor. Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Living Happy Midlife. Today's conversation is going to be a little different and a lot deeper. We're talking about something that every one of us is going to experience at some point in life: grief, change, and transformation. My guest today is my friend Tess Booker. Tess is a certified life coach, emotional alignment expert. She's an author and also a podcast host. Tess helps people to navigate life's turning points with grace, with courage, and with compassion. Now, I need to tell you that this episode was inspired by something very personal. Um, just 2 weeks ago, I received one of those phone calls that we all dread. News that someone I have loved for over 40 years had passed away unexpectedly, tragically. And it made me realize something really important. In midlife, these calls start coming more often. Parents, friends, mentors, people we thought would be there forever. So today, Tess and I are exploring how to navigate that grief, not just as women in midlife, but also as coaches, as caregivers, and as human beings. We'll talk about what it means to hold space for others while honoring our own emotions, how grief, when seen through a different lens, can actually be a pathway for growth and transformation. So if you've ever felt lost in grief or unsure how to support someone else who's hurting, this conversation speaks straight to your heart, my friend. It's about remembering that grief isn't the end. It's a process, a turning point, and yes, even an opportunity to rediscover what it means to live fully. So take a deep breath, find a quiet space, and join me and my friend Tess for a powerful and tender episode right here on this episode of Healthy Living Happy Midlife. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited about this conversation today. Um, this is going to be a little bit of a different conversation for me and my guest. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Tess Booker, who is a certified life coach, podcast host, and author who helps navigate life's turning points. And turning points is exactly what we're talking about today. Tess is a mom, a wife, an author, as I mentioned, entrepreneur, and emotional alignment coach. I think this is important, with a heart for healing and a passion for purpose. So she is the founder of Inspired Living Coaching, where she provides a safe, empowering space to define what success means for you and lead you into taking bold steps to claim it. So, Tess, thank you so much for being with me here today and having this conversation. So I want to ask you a little bit about you and how you got to this place in your career as a coach.
Well, life teaches us, right?
Yes.
It comes from the life experiences of chasing dreams that didn't come like how I expected. The ups and downs of marriage, the ups and downs of having children, the empty nest, all the things that life has taught me about that separation that I made between my life and my business, and me learning how to navigate to that being whole. And so I really had to learn how to address my business emotionally, because it was what was holding me back and setting me, actually sabotaging me in so many ways, right? And so when I started getting really clear on my alignments, who I wanted to be with, what was in my soulful journey, as well as my action and taking those bold actions, and making those not so separated. They're more integrated. I started to feel good in my body, feel good in my mind, feel good in my soul. And that is those sweet spots that have gotten me to be here with you, being bold with my voice, expressing myself better, and serving in a greater way. So, thank you so much for having me here, Denise. What a beautiful conversation we're about to open up.
Yes, and it's interesting how this is appropriate. You and I had this call scheduled, and yet things that have happened in both of our lives in the last month or so are actually dictating this conversation. So to start, I said earlier, this conversation is going to be a little different. You know, in midlife, we know that at some point we're going to get a call, and it's not going to be a pleasant one. I received such call 2 weeks ago, not quite 2 weeks ago. And uh, my girlfriend, who I've known for over 40 years, her young daughter called me to tell me that she was tragically killed on September 24th. And that, I still say it, and I still actually don't believe it's true, although I just came back from her funeral. So these conversations or these phone calls are they're going to come, and I'd like to talk with Tess about how we manage them. How do we, as a person who is grieving, who's receiving those calls, but also from our perspective as coaches, how we can help our clients. So Tess, I'd like for you to kind of come in here and give me your thoughts. um, I'm your client and I just told you this. What is that first conversation that you and I have? What does that
Well,
look like?
what I understand about the neurology that affects our actions and how we show up and how we respond to life
Mhm,
is that emotional impact creates change.
mhm,
And so when you get a call of somebody dying that you're not expecting, that's emotional impact.
mhm,
So without addressing those emotions and without allowing someone to feel what they need to feel and have the safe space to do that, I think that lessens the outcomes if we don't allow our clients to do that. Does that
mhm.
make sense?
It does. It does make sense. And I think as a coach, so often, we're the person, the one that a client turns to for all sorts of reasons. And the challenge, of course, is to understand what that person's going through, but to also understand our own um, growth and our own understanding, personal, internal understanding of how we can best help that person, right? Just saying, what do you say? What can they expect? I think this is difficult as a coach.
Well, yeah, because when you're talking, like, I think, we had a little bit of conversation before this, but I think it was really profound how we addressed that we can't prepare for grief because there's the before, there's in the middle, and there's after.
Mhm,
And so, in those stages, where do you fit as the coach, right? And where are you as the coach? So, if you're in your own grieving processes, we have to be able to say when we're available, when we're not available, first as a coach, because
mhm,
the tendency is to be responsible for other people's um, well-being.
mhm.
And so sometimes I think a coach, if you're a coach and, as we're having this conversation and you're going through your grieving, well, sometimes you have to get another coach. Sometimes you have to process what you need to process before you jump into someone else's thing. Because I think the number one thing with being a coach is you being secure, you being safe with you so that you can be safe with that person in front of you.
Mhm. That does make sense. And it's, you know, I think knowing that, understanding that as a coach, but also understanding as the client, what they should or shouldn't expect from a coach. I'm the menopause mentor, right? I help women in midlife. Um, Obviously, there's always conversations that go beyond hot flashes and mood swings.
Exactly. Because you got this physical thing going on. All right, we need to address that. Right? You can't ignore the symptoms. And I think when someone is coming to a coach, I really think I had to really I've gone through so many coaches being a coach.
Hmm.
And we do. Most coaches are being coached, right?
True.
And so what I found with the coaches that I identified with and the coaches that really I found cared more about me, um, that they cared more about me than their success in fixing me.
Ooh, the fixing part. Yes, there's
Right?
always that.
They cared more about where I was at, where if I could implement what they were asking, if my knowledge needed more knowledge, or if I needed to back out and just be in expressive mode, whatever I needed, and they if they were present to that, and it was
Mhm.
I knew that it was more important than them getting the results that they were looking for. That was the coaches that I wanted to be with.
Right. Because as a coach, the result, each person comes to us in a different place and different space, right? Um, this grief piece, you know, we've all experienced grief at some point in our lives, right? And whether that person has managed that and gone through the grieving process, accepted, or is it still sitting back there? That
Well,
is
and
that I
Denise,
think is difficult.
do you know that grief isn't even an emotion?
Okay, explain what grief is, please.
Grief is a process. Grief is
You're right.
full of every emotion you can have. Grief has anger, sadness, happy, joy, trusting, not trusting, loving, hating. Every emotion comes out in grief because we're losing something and we don't know what we're gaining.
That is a interesting perspective. What are we gaining? Is it, and I don't know, and maybe
We don't
it's
know.
different for everybody.
And it's different for everyone.
So it is interesting. As soon as you said, grief was not an emotion, I kind of laughed. I'm like, Yeah, you're right. It's just all of them. They say that there are five stages of grief, but we just named like eight or
And
nine
you
different
don't know
emotions.
what your client, where they're at in that grief process. Your job is just to get them to the next step. They may grow out of you and need another coach,
Mhm.
or they may stick with you for a little while, or whatever that is. But our job is just to get them better than what they were, not to fix anything.
Mhm. I love that you said that because I think so often when I have talked to potential clients, they're looking for a fix, whether it's that quick fix, diet, or give me a program, or give me a something. And it's not exactly that, right? It
Denise,
is,
they know what they need. They just need to uncover it and explore it for themselves. Most people know what they need and they will get what they want. Our job is not to figure that out. We just allow people to have the choices, and we can we can give the options. We can give a different perspective, but does it mean that they have to take it?
true.
No.
That's true. I think you're right. That is true. It's looking at something from a different perspective. It's asking questions that they may or may not have asked themselves.
Right. And sometimes one session can do that and get their clarity. And sometimes it's a longer process. And sometimes you have to say no, and sometimes you say yes. And it's allowing all of those things to come up so that they can see themselves.
So they can see themselves, yes, through grief, through the process. Are, have they taken, they're not looking at themselves, they're still looking outward.
Absolutely. Because
Hmm.
it happened and they're looking at all the rubbish and all the things that are sitting is because grief feels like rubbish, right? It feels like uh, rubbish, meaning it's just all these things that you can't do anything with quite yet. And it's out there and you're looking at it. So it is very external, and
Hmm.
that's the space where most people with grief, they just don't want to do it alone. We just don't
I,
want to be alone.
yeah, I think it's important not to be alone in grief. Um, because then either you're you could go down just such a negative path and stay there, right? Losing
It
somebody is
moves no
hard,
progress towards what could
right?
be better.
Right. Or towards the acceptance piece, right?
And
And that's
sometimes
kind of,
people, oh, sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
And sometimes people want to be left alone, and that's okay too.
Hmm.
Because if you're not alone, then you don't know what it is to have somebody with you,
That's true.
right? And so sometimes people have to know what it feels like to be alone to know that they even need to not be alone.
And that's hard.
It
That's a hard
is.
one to really grasp because people people go, opposite sides, right? They can't, they want to be around people all the time, like they don't want to be left alone. And so then they're not really dealing with their emotions. Then you have a person on the opposite end that doesn't want anyone around, maybe. Um, and maybe they're wallowing, or maybe they're stuck in a negative emotion, the anger and the disbelief, which isn't healthy either, because I think they need, you need to move on to those more positive emotions, right? I mean, the end result maybe is acceptance and being able to move on.
Yeah, and that sometimes can take a little more time, and people, and the problem being the coach, I think for me, when I was in a space of like their success meant my success, right?
Mm.
That
Hmm.
wasn't like helping anyone. So I've learned to not take it personal. I've learned to give people the space if people aren't showing up, right? They don't show up because they maybe there could be many things. It could be they don't feel safe, maybe they just need to be alone, maybe
Hmm.
they're in their own angst, but giving the client the space to do that and allowing that to happen is really important in the process because now I can have take off all the judgment around it.
Hmm.
And when you take off the judgment, then they're more apt to come back. They're more
Hmm.
apt to work through it. And if they don't work through it with you, they're maybe more apt to work through it with someone else because now you've taken out all the reasons why they shouldn't.
Hmm.
Should or shouldn't, right? Because
Right.
we do a lot of shoulding on people.
Right. We do it to ourselves.
We do it to ourselves mostly. So that's where that empathy has to come in for yourself, right?
Hmm. And you make a good point in saying that, sometimes you're not the coach. And I know that for, clients, sometimes, I could help them, but am I the best fit for them? Probably not. And understanding that now as a coach, as opposed to when I first started coaching, because I wanted to help everybody, with everything,
So
right?
how did you know that wasn't, how did you know, Denise, when that you weren't their coach? What process did you go through to get to that?
When, so the process for me, in the beginning, I was just so excited to help the world, to help anybody and everybody who wanted to work through things. And I realized at some point what, obviously, what my strengths were, what my scope of practice was. And if it didn't fit in my scope of practice, it was uncomfortable. It was difficult. The conversations were hard. It was like pulling teeth. And I kept thinking, coaching shouldn't be this hard. It was very emotional, draining. And I thought, this doesn't seem, I don't think this is the way it's supposed to be. So I worked with a different coach at this time. Um, and she was funny. She kept saying to me, you need to be more vulnerable. You need to be more vulnerable. And I'm like, what the heck? But in that, like, you know, I was thinking she meant like I needed to tell everyone like my whole life story and, all the things about me to be vulnerable. And looking back, I realized that I needed to be vulnerable to myself so I could understand, what I was good at, what my gift was. And once I understood that, uh, clients, saying yes or no to clients or having them say yes or no, it made sense. When a client, prospective person came and we chatted, I would say I knew 15 minutes into a conversation that it wasn't quite in alignment. Not that I couldn't help them, but it wasn't really what I was, my scope of genius, or not necessarily what they needed at that time. So at some point, yes, I could see working with, I have two people in my mind. I could see working with them, and one of them I actually have. But initially, I referred her to somebody else because that coach focused more on what the big challenge she was focusing on at the time.
So I think what you're describing is staying in your own lane and doing the
Yes.
things you're good at and not
Hmm.
worrying and being every what other people are doing is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of a coach that is standing and has had the experience of being vulnerable themselves. What does it feel like to be vulnerable to yourself, right?
Mm.
Oh my goodness. And coaches have
Let's look
drawn
in
that
the
out of
mirror.
me
It's
too.
that, yeah,
It's
it's
looking
that
in the
looking in the
mirror,
mirror again.
addressing you, not pointing your fingers at
Hmm.
somebody else, right? Because they are those finger it's dealing with you first.
Hmm.
And there's things I didn't want to look at me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but yeah, but once I sat in those things that I was afraid of, that I felt vulnerable to, that I didn't like about me, whatever those things were, once I just learned how to let those go, have more empathy for myself, more love, more grace, more approval, I'm safe, I'm secure. That's what we get to offer our clients.
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely.
such a beautiful way to be. It's a freedom in coaching. There's a
Yes,
lot of freedom in that.
absolutely. And when you're working with the right coach at that whatever time in your life, when you're with that right coach, you're making progress, whether it's, you're going through a program or you're going through some process. You feel the growth, you feel the excitement, you feel the energy. Um, and I think as we're, talking through this grief process, as a client, you know, you want to feel like you're moving forward. You're not just stuck in these negative feelings and and heaviness.
Well, and one of the things that I want to be clear about is sometimes when you get a coach, there's a lot of resistance in the beginning.
Mhm.
There's always resistance to something that's new.
Yeah.
And so when you're with somebody, and I think it's really important that you don't um, find yourself in a position just because there's resistance doesn't mean you're not supposed to be there or that it isn't a good fit for you
Hmm.
because it requires just a little bit of resistance and emotional impact to make the new change,
Hmm.
right? Um, so, to be clear, you may get a coach that pushes you and stretches you. That's different than a coach that's not in your alignments,
I
right?
agree. Yes,
Because
absolutely.
you don't want to discount that fear or that anxiety because it's telling you something. And it's either saying, stick with this and get through it and work with this gal and see what's on the other side, or no, I really need to pay attention to me a little bit more, get more clarity, right? Either, and sometimes it's pushing through it, and sometimes it's a clear no.
Hmm.
And you get to say, yes, I am going to say no,
Hmm. Absolutely.
right?
Um, and of course, if a person is seeking out a coach, there's something going on. As the client, something is going on, and you want to work that through. Um,
But
so I think
sometimes we
that's
resist the very thing we've asked for.
absolutely, absolutely.
Like you're
And
asking for help and then you're
right.
just sabotaging it all.
Yeah, exactly. So, how often do we go to a doctor or a physical therapist? We've tweaked our shoulder, and the physical therapist gives us exercises, right? And they tell us all the reasons why we need to do these exercises, right? It's to strengthen the muscle. It's to get past the pain. It's to get to heal the problem. But we leave the physical therapist office. Maybe we do the exercises once or twice. And then we kind of go, those exercises really weren't doing anything.
Yeah, and I think that's when the practitioner, the healer, the coach needs to go, okay, because what happens is they're going to not understand it till retrospect.
Hmm.
Right? They will go on their days, they're going to continue in their process, they're going to continue to avoid, they're going to continue to do the thing that they want. And that's not our job because they're getting what they want. And
Hmm.
then that was all. Our job is to build it, place it in front of them, and let go of the outcome.
Hmm.
Because there were so many coaches I showed up to, Denise, and did that same thing. I mean, I was scared, I was anxious, I wasn't even comfortable in my own skin, let alone being with them who wasn't comfortable in their own skin. And then you're just like mingling, and it's messy sometimes. And that messy, you don't even know that it was part of your process till it's over, it's gone, and you look back and you go, "Oh, I'm glad I had that."
Yeah. Like I mentioned about the coach who kept telling me to be vulnerable. I was thinking this girl is a nut job. Like, I'm gonna spill my guts and tell everything about my life to be vulnerable. It
Oh
wasn't,
yes, Denise,
and
this
she
is
wasn't,
my
and I have to say, like at the time, like looking back, she wasn't incredibly clear what she what she meant, right? But in her mind, she was, right? I wasn't ready to understand, maybe.
right. And maybe you were never meant to understand. I mean, we
Hmm.
don't know. It's information, and you don't need information until you need information. So most people are just they're just throwing it out anyways because our brains can't handle information until we need it. It stores, right? But it
Hmm.
information's a funny thing. We can know so much and then not do anything. So,
That's true. Hmm.
right? And so as an emotional coach, Denise, I get that kickback all the time dealing with people don't like to deal with emotions. They honestly they hate it, or they suppress, or they ignore, or and there's a lot of value in it. But I could say that till I'm blue in the face. But until someone's ready to look at the anger, or look at the avoiding, or the procrastinating, or those ugly feelings they have, there's not, it's just in awareness. It
Hmm.
has to be in your awareness first, right?
That's true. That's true.
So, like, that's funny that you're like talking to the vulnerable, be more vulnerable. Nobody knows what that means. It means like roll over and let them kick me,
Right. Like,
right?
what does that mean to
You're like, really?
I'm like, okay. And I kept thinking to myself, I paid for this, I paid for several months of coaching, and that's the only thing I ever remember her saying to me. And at
And
the
it was
time,
important.
at the time it wasn't.
Right,
At least I didn't realize that it was.
right.
It didn't mean anything to me at that time,
Until
right?
it
But
needed to mean something.
exactly, all these years later,
Hmm.
when I realized, oh, shoot,
That's
I
not
get
what
it.
she was saying. That's not how that meant. I mean, we
Mhm.
just like we get these ideas and we have to rewrite the story
Yeah.
and find the gift. So like in the grief, we talked about you're gaining something, right? You don't know what you're gaining. There is a gift, but it's not my job to tell you what that gift is. It's your job to go, okay, I'm going to go through this so that I can find that. What can be better? What is possible? What have I gained from this?
Hmm.
There's
Right.
something to be gained
Hmm.
in the loss.
Yes. And when it's new and it's raw, obviously
No,
that's not something you're going to see. Um,
right.
but there is also there are opportunities that um, come because of this loss. Um, for example, with my friend's daughter, she and I have known each other for, since she was a little girl, and we've spent time together. Um, I said to her, I said, you know, I'm still here for you. Let's continue our relationship. Like, your mom would be happy that, we're supporting each other because we love each other. She's an amazing young woman. And so the opportunity here was, now I have a little bit more presence in her life and her in mine. That's an opportunity, but then again, that's a gift too.
Right. And present, a gift, presence, gift. I mean, it's in my mind, I love words and playing on words. So it's like it presence is a gift. And to be clear about the grief, I have a lot of people in my life that I recently watched address grief so beautifully.
Mhm.
And it really made me question why some people fall apart and why some people never like get through it, and they live their whole lives just like in that loss. And then there's people that get through it really fast and really quick, and
Yeah.
they find the gift immediately and they can celebrate in the moment right then. And honestly, because I know that's a possibility for people to just go straight into the loss, into the celebration pieces of it, it gives me hope that we can do it,
Mhm.
because I have evidence of people doing that. It's our job to look at somebody and allow them to show us, and that's what it is. We get to show it by being it.
Right. And we all want to have hope. We never want to, as soon as we lose hope in life and love and humanity, what's the point of going on, right? That you're
That's a
not
very good
living
question.
anymore. You're just surviving.
And then we go into the automatic and the
Mhm. Hmm.
and we're not uncomfortable. We're just comfortable and we're just riding along until we die. We all know we're going to die, and yet none of us have the ability to, or none of us recognize the capability to see death different,
Hmm.
because we've been programmed that that's the end. This They're gone, so now I got to deal with this. I'm alone. Like all those things that come up. Natural human.
Hmm.
But when is the point where we can tap into that divine, that it is enough? We are gaining. There is life in this somewhere,
Hmm.
because it's life and death.
Hmm. And yes, and it is part. It's that whole circle, it is part of it. And life is beautiful. And there is sadness in death because at some point, yes, there's some closure. But even there, when you think, celebrating someone in a way because of their life, not focusing on well, they're not here anymore. But they did all of these amazing things when they were here. They helped others. They were a most beautiful daughter. They had worked at a hospital and were always supporting patients or whatever it may be, right? All of those beautiful things. That's that's what life is.
And I think
I'm
it's
sure.
honoring you and being sad that they're gone, but honoring them that they're not gone, because they left all those pieces,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. It's not like somebody goes and you forget about them. They're still in your heart.
And
Now.
it's honor, right? It's like this
Hmm.
awe of you and them,
Hmm.
because you are now part of them and they're part of you. And how does that separate? You're always going to be a mom. You have a daughter. You're not going to not be a mom anymore, or a grandma, or a friend, or whatever that relationship you had. How do you separate that?
Yeah, you're right. Why separate it?
And why separate it? But
Yeah.
we like to separate because we have a mind, and we have a body, and we have a spirit, and it's fragmented. And when it gets fragmented, we're not clear, we're in confusion, we're frustrated, we're ashamed, we're guilty. That's when you're just not living the best life.
Hmm. And of course, the person who's no longer physically here, they would want you to, I mean, move on, continue with life. Like instead of just, you know, yes, it's a change. I mean, yes, life is change,
Yeah, that's
right?
the
Most
point.
of
We're
our
losing, we're
clients
gaining.
come to us because they want change, as much as they'll fight about it. But that's what they want. They want change. And that's this is just another example of change uh, in life and how it can still grow. Life can still grow.
It does grow. I mean, a seed dies, it goes back in the ground,
Mhm.
and it comes back up again as a different plant, but it's
Right.
the same seed, and everything is connected like this circle of life. And I started thinking about, losing my father-in-law was really kind of a bittersweet, but when I started to see him as he died how he wanted to,
Mm.
he it wasn't how I wanted him to. That wasn't how we wanted him to leave this earth, but he
Sure.
died how he wanted to. And it gave me this concept that maybe he's not contained to gravity anymore, not contained to these earthly laws. He's everywhere and available. And I don't know where he went or where he's at, but he has everything available.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thing that you just said. It made me think of transformation, right? Change, transformation. Think of
Yeah.
a piece of ice, right? piece of ice. It's hard, it's cold, it's solid. Warm it up, and now you have water,
Water.
right? Different form, still the
Same
same thing,
thing.
just a different form. Heat that water up even more, and now you have vapor. Can't see vapor, but
Mm-mm.
it's still there.
But
We
it's
know
still
it's
there.
there.
It's,
And
yeah.
so thank you for making me think that, reminding me of that. Because we're saying the word change, and then when the word transformation came to my brain, that
It's still water in that transformation. You're not going to, the properties have not changed.
right.
It's how it shows up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's
And
comforting
what
too.
if, what if my father-in-law, he was in a lot of pain, there was a lot of suffering, there was a lot of grief that he wasn't processing, and I understood all these things in his life. When I recognized that there's none of that for him, it actually made me happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting, right? Because I never, I
Very.
had to process that as,
Sure.
yeah, and went through that. But when I got perspective of that
Mm-hmm.
transformation, that nothing really changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, right? The properties are still the same. It just
Right.
appears different, looks different, and
Right.
is different.
Right. Which is what we said earlier. It's just the different perspective.
It's just a different perspective. And we're constantly getting different perspectives in every moment. And Denise, just like us sitting here, we're giving space for each other to have those different perspectives, process it a little bit. And then I have lots of questions still. I mean, I'm going to get off of here and go question things. And this is,
Sure.
I mean, this is the whole idea of being able to hold the space
Mm-hmm.
for people to feel safe to have conversations like this.
Yes. Yes. Their conversations are not always easy, but they are available for people. There is safe space.
And it's important to agree and disagree and to have all of that in there
Mm-hmm.
because that's how we learn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I
And
think on this planet, we are all here to learn.
mhm.
That's what we do. We learn. Is, be curious, continue to be curious, continue to learn something new, continue to learn something about yourself. That's living.
That's the key is just like it because no one's going to be you except you. No one's going to fix anything but you. Or and maybe nothing's broken. That's a
Hmm.
concept.
That's a good concept.
Right? That's a
Hmm.
concept. But it's finding those congruencies of your body, your mind, your spirit that actually brings the peace that passes all that
Hmm.
understanding. Right.
I love this conversation. Thank you so much for this. We're at closing at this stage, but I think we're at a good place here.
Yeah, I agree.
And thank you so much. Tess, how can our listeners find you? Because I know people are listening and they're going, yeah, yeah, Denise, the menopause lady. I need to talk to that Tess lady. Where's that Tess?
And
How do I
my
find that
my
Tess
clients
Booker?
are going, yeah, I need to talk to that Denise lady too.
Like,
So
hello, hot flashes.
yes, hot flashes because we're in this middle age. Like, what is going on with our body? Right? And I love
Exactly.
that.
Always
That's
something
what
new.
I love this cohesive space that
Hmm.
you're giving me opportunity to be with you. Thank you. And you can find me at tessbooker.com. That's basically
Thank
where
you
you'll
for
find me.
making that so easy for people to find you, Tess. So everyone, tessbooker.com. That will be in the show notes. Um, any last thoughts, Tess, before we sign off?
Beautiful. There you go. Beautiful.
I love it. Thank you so much. This was a
Yes.
lovely conversation, and I think one that so many people really needed to hear, whether they need it today, tomorrow, or next week. This is available for people to understand, you know, change and grief and transformation. That is life.
Yeah. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks everyone for listening to us today. We will be here again next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Till then, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy midlife. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Healthy Living, Happy Midlife. My hope is that today's conversation left you inspired, encouraged, and ready to take the next step toward creating a vibrant, fulfilling life that you deserve. Remember, you don't have to settle for fatigue, brain fog, or frustration. Midlife is not the end of your story, it's the doorway to your next best chapter. And I'm here to help you walk through it with energy, with confidence, and with joy. So, if you're ready to take this journey further, I invite you to schedule a free strategy call with me. The link is in the show notes. And together we'll design a plan that works for you at this time in your life, for your body. So, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Catch the video version on YouTube so you never miss another episode. Share it with a friend who needs to hear that midlife can truly be the most powerful season of her life. Until next time, I'm Denise Stegall, reminding you that healthy living, happy midlife is just possible. It's yours for the